We have joining today's meeting Travis Mitchell, representing the Center for Regional Growth, and Mr. Blackman is here representing the Board of Supervisors. So let's have a roll call vote to get started. Dave Demore.
Here.
Todd Rulison.
Here.
Okay. Jane Kelly.
Here.
Mike Fitzgerald.
Here.
Tim Munn. Tim, can you hear us?
Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Joe Gillis cannot join us today. He's on duty at the fire department. So, all right, minutes from the August 11th meeting. Hope everybody received and reviewed those. Are there any comments or changes that need to be made? Hearing none, would someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
I got Mike Fitzgerald, Todd Rulison with a second. Roll call vote to approve. Dave Demore,
Yes.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly,
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Tim Munn.
Aye.
Budget report is attached to your agenda. A fairly straightforward budget report. Interest earnings of $80.40 on the revenue side, and on the expenditure side, salaries and expenses at Tryon, which included mowing under our contract, and the appraisals that we had conducted on the 3 buildings that was authorized at your last meeting. And the last was a payment to for work on updating the IDA website. As you see, the revenue and expense that has been associated with electricity for Vireo Health is gone, which has as a result of that new being implemented. Any questions on this month's budget report? Hearing none, would someone make a motion to approve the report? Jane Kelly? Is there a second to that?
Tim Munn, I'll second.
Tim Munn? Do a roll call vote. Tim Munn?
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Jane Kelly?
Aye.
Todd Rulison?
Aye.
Dave Demore?
Aye.
Okay. 2 committee reports, the monthly bank reconciliation reports. Dave Demore, you had a chance to look at those?
Yeah, they were fine.
Okay, very good. Moving on to other reports. Travis, or excuse me, John Blackman, liaison report from the Board of Supervisors. Anything to report today?
Not a lot. We're off. Our next board meeting is not until next Monday. We had our budget review 2 weeks ago. Virtually no departments asked for any increases in money for next year, understandably. FMCC has postponed every project this year till next year because they're getting no state matching funds. I do not have good figures yet for how far down the sales taxes are for the county. We know they're down, I just don't know by how much. And one interesting thing that's come up the last couple of weeks is that houses in Gloversville are selling like hotcakes. Almost every house that's been put on the market, especially in the better neighborhoods, have been selling almost immediately for the last couple of months now. So that's quite a change for Gloversville. So.
Thanks, John. And I'm talking with a couple of local attorneys, both indicating that the real estate market countywide is pretty active right now.
I don't know if that's people trying to move out of the urban areas to more remote areas or not, but and places on the Sacandaga, you can't even get it. I mean, they're just and they're getting top dollar, if not more. So.
What I've heard is that anecdotally that there is a fair number of people coming up from downstate in the city looking to get out of New York City to find more peaceful environments for their families. So they're buying homes up here. I don't think we're the only community seeing this.
Well, probably not, but I think, as you know, Gloversville's had a hard time selling houses for quite a few years here now. So this is quite a turnaround for Gloversville. So
Mhm.
Well, let's hope it continues. Travis, CRG report, anything to offer?
Sure, I got a few things. Thanks for having me. Out at the Tryon Technology Park, marketing out there, may have seen in about 2 weeks ago now, a constant contact email blast went out. The Tryon Technology Park's waiting for you, just advertising the shovel-ready sites there. I think it hit about 500 recipients. As far as our building at 34 West Fulton Street, there's been some demolition work in the back there. That building that's been done and cleaned up now, and continuing to work on the facade on the front of it. Micro-enterprise grant programs, a couple checks were presented within the last couple weeks to Frank's Gun Shop and Austin's Glass. We usually do these monthly business tours for elected officials and others. Those are obviously on hold with the COVID issues. Various community assistance programs. Continue to work with Gloversville, of course, on the LWRP waterfront revitalization program, the DRI initiative. Let's see, out in Mayfield, we attended, a couple representatives attended a soft opening for the Great Sacandaga Brewery. I think they maybe over this past weekend had their hard opening. Out in Dodgeville, working with Herkimer County IDA on a potential joint project that's on the Fulton County, Herkimer County line. There's a meeting on that last week. Working with Mohawk Valley Capital Partner, approved by the Economic Development Administration for $2 million in working capital that should be available in the next couple weeks to be able to tap into. That's a 6-county EDA that was awarded $2 million in working capital. Ron is on that board of directors, and that's available to any projects out in those counties. They're working on payback terms and the details now. As far as business marketing and business recruitment, just the generally continue to work with various leads and businesses around the county looking for space and trying to find matches for them. Wrapping up the Fulton County Business Magazine initiative that Ken and Ron have been working on. Plan is to have that distributed locally and statewide and nationally, I guess, to various site selectors. That should be ready in the next month or so, I believe. Continuing general marketing and developer relationships. Let's see, as far as 2020 business events, the AIM workforce program that's in the second phase now, second round of meetings with different businesses. That's a program out of the Mohawk Valley Community College and looking for workforce. They now have contracts with 6 different businesses in Fulton County and trying to line up some more. Last one, I guess, a joint Johnstown and Gloversville Town Hall style meeting planned for September 23rd, the Holiday Inn. This comes out of a successful similar event just for Gloversville, looking for what businesses in the area, what they need, just trying to understand a little bit about their needs in that town hall style forum. And that wraps up our report. Any questions?
Any questions for Travis? First, let's welcome Joe Semyon to the meeting. Morning, Joe.
Morning, everyone. My computer is updated now.
Oh, good. All righty. Thanks, Travis.
Welcome.
Thanks, Travis.
Moving on to.
Thank you,
old
Travis.
Old business, continuing to updating the IDA's website. One of the things that we've talked with Betsy Emery about was in response to this COVID pandemic, adding some narrative graphics to our homepage, emphasizing that Fulton County is a safe, healthy, low-risk place to live and do business. Kind of what, Dave, what you just mentioned, there seems to be, folks looking for places to move out of, in the big cities, and maybe trying to latch onto that movement, but having that point of emphasis placed on our homepage. So when someone comes to that, they're going to see some buzzwords: healthy, safe, things, something of that nature that may attract their attention, or grab their attention. Is that something you folks would be okay with, or is that just is that not what the IDA's website should be dealing with, or should that be someplace else? Just wanted to toss that out there and see what your thoughts were.
I think anytime you can say that, and it is true, our numbers are down here in terms of COVID. It is a safe, healthy place to be. So I would think it would be, those buzzwords would be good. We're trying to attract business, right? So those would be helpful, I think.
Okay.
My opinion.
My only concern, Jim, was the possibility of being overly specific about COVID concerns.
Yeah, wouldn't mention the word COVID.
No, I understand, but safe, healthy, low risk place. Safe and healthy seemed reasonable to me. Low risk seemed a little
Risky.
it just didn't seem to be like, well, what exactly does that mean? So I think safe, healthy.
Any other buzzwords from folks?
Housing market is up.
Probably say beautiful location. We probably say, foothills of the Adirondacks, right? We always try to brag about that we're, in a geographically beautiful place. So I'm sure. Yeah.
I do think it fits in with the theme of what the county's been trying to market for some time, and that is, doing that 180 from your busy, hectic life and, finding a quieter place to reside and work and recreate.
Quieter life. I like that. Okay, very good. Well, then we'll continue to work on that. We're also, what Betsy is recommending, and she's going to be presenting a proposal to the board later this year, and that is for the IDA to join LinkedIn and to actually do some advertising on LinkedIn. And we'll talk about that a little bit further when we talk about our budget for next year. And the other thing, David had made a comment when he was looking at our website about the need to have some type of a flow chart that shows and describes Fulton County's economic development program. And I thought that was a great observation. We all understand what our program consists of, but somebody from, a business, from outside the area who's not familiar with us, when they start hearing CRG, IDA, EDCs, all this, they don't understand that. So we're working on some narrative right now to address that, so that when someone comes onto our website and they'll see all these different names, there'll be an explanation there so that folks can understand who the various players are in our economic development program.
And Jim, I've been looking at that, and I think it's a good start. I'm still struggling a little bit to graphically depict, looking for that sweet spot that I think accurately depicts the relationship between the organizations involved. And I haven't had a moment to really kind of sketch anything out that would be responsive to your request for feedback. I think the descriptions you've got there look fine. I'd like to have the graphic piece of that tightened up a little bit, I think.
Okay. What I'd like to do, Dave, is we've drafted a first draft of this flow chart and narrative, and I've shared it with Dave as the chairman. Maybe I'll send it around to everybody to take a look at, and so I'll send that out later today and ask you to take a look. And again, the upper part is this flow chart, which is crude at best right now. So I think that's what Dave's talking about, is trying to come up with something that will better display graphically how this program works and how it fits all together. So I would appreciate any thoughts and suggestions that you may have. And once we get something tightened up, then we'll send it out to, I want to send it to the CRG, to the Board of Supervisors for them to take a look at also. But I want to make sure we have it in a format that we're comfortable with to start with. Okay. Next is our Cushman Wakefield, and we will discuss that in executive session in terms of what's going on with their marketing. For the lands on the south side of County Road 107, just to bring you up to speed, at your last meeting, the board agreed to ask the purchasers to submit a signed purchase contract to the IDA by August 18th. That executed contract was received by that date. Chairman executed that contract, and it was returned on August 21. And the deposit check referenced in the purchase contract has been received and is being held by Caldwell Banker. The contract included 3 conditions. 1, the estimated IDA legal fees that the purchaser would be responsible for paying should be identified. They wanted verification that this parcel will be included in proposed Fulton County Sewer District number 4. And they wanted verification that either the town of Perth or Fulton County will take over ownership of the access road that traverses through that parcel. Upon receiving those 3 conditions, the first one has been addressed. Kara sent her estimate to Paul Kaloje, the purchaser's attorney, so that issue has been addressed. Item number 2 has also been addressed. Several weeks ago, I emailed Dave Huckins a map done by the Environmental Design Partnership Group that the county hired to prepare the map plan report for proposed Fulton County Sewer District number 4, showing that parcel will be included within that sewer district. Mr. Huckins responded by saying that was acceptable, and that addressed item number 2. Item number 3 still needs to be addressed by the buyers prior to closing, and the purchase contract stipulates that the closing shall be on or before September 30th of this month. The contract also says that the attorneys for the seller and buyer had to agree to all matters by September 1. Kara sent Paul Kaloje that day a series of proposed modifications to the purchase contract. So Kara upheld our side of that stipulation in the contract. Kara, did you hear anything back from Paul on those?
I have not received a response. I'll follow up with him today, though.
Okay. The contract also said that the seller shall cooperate in providing any surveys to the purchaser, and the purchaser shall pay for the cost of updating any of those surveys. Last week, I sent Dave Huckins a copy of the boundary survey that Ferguson and Foss prepared when the ID took title to the property from the state. They showed the parcel on the south side of County Road 107, as well as a written description. So again, fulfilled our obligation per that purchase contract. Late last week, Dave Huckins met with David Dopp, the Town of Perth's highway superintendent, to discuss taking over, the town taking over ownership of that road. Mr. Huckins was advised that two things would have to happen for the town to consider taking it over. One was that the road would have to be upgraded to the town's specifications. And Mr. Dopp advised Mr. Huckins of what that would entail. And that secondly, the current owner of the land upon which the road sits on, which is the IDA, would have to formally ask the town to take the road over. It can't come from the proposed purchaser of the land. The request has to come from the current owner, which would be us. So what I'm going to ask you for is for a motion to approve sending a request to the town of Perth that they take over ownership of this road as part of this proposed sale of this 27 acres to Tryon Organics Enterprises, which is the corporate name of who will be purchasing this property. So, questions, discussion?
Jim, I guess my question is, if we put in the request, is Huckins Group still going to be responsible for the upgrades?
Yes,
Because I don't think the town's going to accept it until those are done.
that is absolutely correct. And Dave understands that, and the letter that we would send would stipulate that. Okay? Any other questions?
What's the overall condition of that road, Jim? Is it in need of repaving?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the details, Tim, from Mr. Huckins, other than to say that he and the town highway superintendent discussed what would need to be done. They worked out an estimated cost based upon that work. And it's really up to Mr. Huckins and his partners to decide whether they want to make that investment in that road, which they still need to do. But in the meantime, the town has said, in order for us to consider that, the request has to come from the current owner, which is the IDA. So the request would be specific to this proposed purchase. All right, it would be tied to them purchasing the property. If they walked away, for example, the request would go away. Okay? Any other questions?
I guess it's just my feeling that should that request really come from us, or should it come from Huckins and his group after they purchase the property? Because the town of Perth is not going to vote to accept that road until the work's done. To me, it's kind of like a moot point that we're making the request when we know the road's currently not in a position to be accepted.
It's pretty typical, Mike, when they do a subdivision,
Mm-hmm.
the person proposing the subdivision needs that assurance that if they build this road and to their spec, to the town spec, that the town will take it over.
Okay.
So this is kind of the same thing. It's a condition to this purchase. So Mr. Huckins is saying, we will purchase this property if we know that if we have to update this road, but when it's done, the town will take it over. Okay, that, you know, it's all, and we're being asked to do this because the town, this is what the town has said they want to have. Okay?
Okay,
Would someone be willing to make a motion to authorize the chairman to send a letter to the town of Perth asking that the town take over ownership of this road on the south side of 107?
I make that motion.
Would someone second that motion?
I will second it.
Todd Rulison. Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please. Dave Demore,
Aye.
Joe Semyon,
Aye.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly. Jane Kelly,
Aye, sorry, my volume.
Mike Fitzgerald,
aye.
and Tim Munn.
Aye.
Very good. Dave, I have that letter. I'll have that letter ready to sometime today or tomorrow.
That's fine. If you get it to me before like mid-afternoon today, I'd be able to respond.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will be out late this afternoon, into the evening, and most of tomorrow morning into the afternoon. So.
Okay, then I'll make it a point to get it to you by noontime today,
Okay.
assuming Joe Semyon doesn't continue to talk here and keep this meeting going forever.
I'm very quiet so far.
All right, so far. Okay, the next under old business is the proposed Nexus Renewable Solar Project. Nexus is still working with the Town of Johnstown Planning Board to obtain their approvals. I did request and receive from them and forwarded to everyone last week the proposed decommissioning plan, decommissioning cost estimate, and site plan for you folks to take a look at. I've gone through and have a number of comments on this document. What the town planning board will be meeting tonight and will commence its review of this decommissioning plan. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to take a look at this, but if you did and you have any comments on it, would appreciate hearing those now.
Jim, I had a chance to skim it. I didn't see anything in there in the brief time I had to review it that was an obvious error or omission of any kind. I am curious, are there standards by which the town is looking for that decommission plan to meet? Or is it just the proposer makes the proposal and the town evaluates it at face value?
That's pretty much how it goes, Dave. The town has approved several of these, so they have experience. They understand what these need to consist of. It will be also reviewed by the town attorney, Leah Everhart, who again has done this several times, so she's got a pretty good feel for what these plans need to include or not. There were a couple of things from my standpoint. You know, when the cost estimate, because there's two parts of this plan. One is all of the language that here's what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, this, that, and whatever. The second part, which is really the more important part, is the engineers have to go through and estimate what the cost would be today to remove everything that's going to be installed.
Mm-hmm.
And they come up with that number, and then they inflate that, you know, a certain percentage each year out to the length of the term of the lease. All right, and say so that in year 25 or 30, whatever the length of the lease term is, you know, they project out what will be the cost at that time that year to do the decommissioning. And so that's the dollar value that has to be in place and available 25 years from now to do this decommissioning. Okay, and the engineers have provided that. Okay, and it looks reasonable. You know, I don't have a real basis for contesting it, but in the written plan, for example, it says, you know, it says the maturity date of a lease of 25 years. Well, that is the base term of our lease with Nexus, but it also has 3 5-year renewable options. So this cost estimate really needs to be extended out to 40 years because that's how long this lease could go. Okay, so that was one of the things I'm going to comment on. Second, it says the plan, this decommissioning plan may be subject to revision based on new standards and emergent best management practices at the time of the decommissioning. Understood, but you know, we got to add in there subject to the approval of the town of Johnstown and the IDA. Just because there's a new best management practice, if the town or the IDA doesn't think it's the right thing to do, you know, it shouldn't be done. So again, those are some one of the comments that I have in here. So there's a few other miscellaneous things that I'd like to share with the planning board, if that's okay with everybody.
Great.
And I guess, Kara, I have a question for you. Should the IDA board, because this decommissioning is going to be on our property, should we be approving this plan also?
I think so. I think that's probably a good idea.
Okay, I do too.
Yeah.
So what I think we need to do is to work together with the town planning board. I think both of us should be approving the same document. So I'll share these comments with them. The town planning board will probably have some comments themselves tonight, and then we'll ask Nexus to make these revisions and get back to us, and then we can look to approve this at our next meeting.
Jim, I had just a couple observations when I read through it.
Sure thing, Mike.
The beneficiary of the bond they're posting is going to be the IDA, correct?
That's a good question. It has to be the town. The town has to, per the town's zoning requirements, they have to be the beneficiary. Okay.
Okay.
But we could also add ourselves as one too. And I think that's one of my comments.
Yeah, 'cause I was thinking that because if we're the owner of the property, you know, the town may come back to us and say, okay, there's a bond available, but IDA, you know, it's your property, figure out how to decommission if anything happened in Nexus Renewable.
Correct. And that's exactly one of my comments.
And then
They have to say that the town is a beneficiary because the town's zoning requirements state that that's such.
Mm-hmm.
For our standpoint, since it's going to be on our land, I think we should also be the beneficiary too.
Great. And then I saw that the access road would probably remain, which I'm not opposed to.
Well, it's funny because in the language, it says it will be retained, but in the cost estimate, they included the cost of taking it out in the cost estimate.
Okay. And the other thing I saw mention of poles. Would those be overhead transmission lines?
Yeah, on their property.
Okay.
Not on, anywhere in the Tryon Technology Park proper, everything has to be underground.
Yeah, that's what my understanding was.
But on their property, or on the property they're going to be leasing, there can be overhead poles.
Okay.
Okay? Any other comments? Very good. We will come back next month with, hopefully that is an action item to approve. Moving on to new business, Fulton County YMCA project. As you recall, a couple of months ago, we received a request to endorse the YMCA's request to NBT Bank for a 3-month deferral of its principal and interest payment on the bonds that they have. The IDA board approved that, and a letter was sent to NBT Bank stating such. Several weeks ago, I got a call from Chris again from the Y saying that they are applying to the bank for a second bond deferral payment. This one, again, would be for a 3-month period, and this would extend the maturity date of the bonds from October 1 to January 1 of 2031. I spoke with Mike Pepp from the bank, and he again asked if the IDA board would send him a letter advising that it supports this request for a second deferral. Any questions on this request? If there are none, would someone make a motion to authorize the executive director to send NBT Bank a letter stating that the board consents to this request for a second deferral?
I'll make that motion, Jim.
All right, we go Todd Rulison, Jane Kelly with a second. Let's do a roll call vote. David Demore,
Aye.
Joe Semyon,
Aye.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly,
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald,
Aye.
and Tim Munn.
Aye.
Okay, next item on the agenda, just some information that came across my desk. The Site Selectors Guild, that's the group of national and international corporate site selectors that had a survey done recently, and just thought some of the results of their survey from what they're seeing and observing and trends would be of interest. The first one, that suburbs, mid-sized cities, and rural areas will be the next winners for corporate location projects. The pandemic has brought suburban areas and mid-sized cities into the forefront of consideration for future site selection projects. Rural areas are now well ahead of large urban areas. Consultants indicate that New York City would be hit especially hard among the nation's largest cities. And of the consultants who agreed that large urban centers are not at all or unlikely to be considered for future projects, 100% said that New York City would be amongst the least likely locations to be considered for future projects in the next 12 months. Again, just, it's a short-term projection, but what I'm interpreting this is there's a window where rural areas are now going to be getting for a period of time where corporate site selectors are going to be giving strong consideration to rural areas for location decisions. Okay. Second one saying office projects will remain on hold until there's a clearing understanding of what the office of the future will look like and the footprint requirements. I think we all agree that the whole outlook of offices and where people are going to be working is going to change dramatically. How that's going to shake out in time will be determined. Manufacturing will continue to be driven by the need to de-risk the global supply chain, and there will be an accelerated rate of reshoring as well as more smaller regional facilities mitigate risk. And then on the last part was the 5 industry sectors that these corporate site selectors identified as being are going to be the most active in the months ahead. Biotech and life sciences, advanced manufacturing, food and beverage processing, transportation logistics, software, and IT. And I mentioned, I think that's important because food and beverage processing is one of the targeted industries that DCG Corporation, when they did our targeted industry analysis, said was an industry cluster that would do well here in Fulton County, particularly at the Tryon Technology Park. So that technology sector is going to be growing. Rural areas are going to be attractive to these industry clusters. Again, maybe an opportunity here for us. So, and lastly, the corporate selector is saying that economic developers should begin shifting focus back to business attraction. Over the last 4 months or so, their focus has said you have to work on business retention. You know, you have to do the things you have to do to keep businesses afloat and keep the ones that you have in business. Now starting to get back into business attraction. So for what that's worth, these are what the best of the best, the biggest of the biggest corporate site selectors are saying. Thought that I just wanted to share that information with you folks. Any comments on what what we just talked about? Okay.
Jim, real quick,
Sure.
the percentages that you're indicating in terms of activity, what are those percentages of?
I don't know, Dave. I read that. No, seriously, I read through that and I couldn't understand it. And I don't know. I have an idea, but I'm not really sure. I apologize for that. I looked at it again this morning.
Okay.
You know, but
Well, it might be helpful if we could kind of track down what those percentages mean. If we're going to stake a policy or a procedure to numbers provided, you know, I'd kind of like to know what those numbers are, what they mean, and if they're significant, or if somebody's just pulling them out of their butt to make it look, you know,
no, I understand.
serious.
Great. And that is copied verbatim, you know, from the news release that they have on their website. So I have no other information to go by. So,
Okay.
but let me see what I can come up with.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Last item on today's open agenda is introduce our proposed 2021 budget. The IDA must adopt and file with Paris a 2021 budget by the end of October. So I'm going to present the first draft today, not asking to approve it today, but just want to introduce it to you and talk about some potential ideas for next year. The proposed budget, it was attached to your agenda. And I'll go through it in summary form right now. This year's total budget was $277,810. But as you recall, the largest component of that was the revenue and expenditure associated with electricity for Vireo Health. So our budget is going from $277,800 this year, proposing right now for next year, going down to $97,660. So a significant drop from this year. Going, you know, I think on the proposed expenditure side, there's a couple of things that would like to review. One, you know, we had in there these desktop environmental assessments as we were looking at potentially evaluating some sites. We had in this year's budget an allocation of $10,000 to do those types of things. Proposing to keep that in, to do that again next year in the event that we get back together and start and come up and look at a few of those sites. So I'm keeping that in for next year. And another expenditure is on our IDA website. And that number is going from $10,000 to $12,000 for next year. And for that $12,000, there's going to be three components. Right now, I'm proposing for that. One would be a $5,000 contract with Betsy Emery to continue to do the monthly updates and updating of our website that she has been doing. Second would be to budget $5,000 to do advertising on LinkedIn that we talked about earlier, where Betsy's recommending that we do some advertising. I'm putting $5,000 in there to do that. And lastly, we also talked about purchasing data to put on the IDAs, the CRGs, and the county's website. Proposing to put in there a $2,000 allocation that we would use to partner with the CRG and Fulton County to purchase data from Statebook that we would put onto our website. So we're looking to have the county, the IDA, and the CRG each kicking in dollars. I'm budgeting about $2,000 for that. On the Tryon Technology Park budget, putting in dollars again for mowing that we do out there, and paying for our insurance. Again, we don't know what that number is going to be, and obviously that could change depending upon if we're to sell anything out there. That could change there also. But the whole overall budget for Tryon, which this year is about $208,000, would drop to about $25,000 for next year. So that would be a significant drop. With that, and again, anyone have any questions or comments on the draft budget for next year? With that, on the agenda, there's also, I'm going to toss out for consideration some other potential projects or initiatives that I'd like the board to consider. Starting with items 1 and 2, advertising on LinkedIn and purchasing data from Statebook, I have actually already included dollars in that budget for those 2 items. But the other ones, I haven't yet. And I wanted your input and feedback on whether these are projects or initiatives that you would like to try to undertake next year. And if so, we need to identify a dollar amount to put into the budget for them. And then as we get through these, if anyone has another idea or thought or suggestion of a project or an initiative or an expense, let's identify those and make a decision of whether we want to include those in. And based upon all your feedback, I'll go back, revise this budget accordingly, and then come back at your October meeting, and we would look to adopt it at that time. So the first one was preparing buildings at Tryon for demolition. And what that would involve would be going in and cleaning out some of these buildings of asbestos, so that we could then demolish them, without having to go through that process of getting state approval and going to do monitoring and testing, and it would be easier to demolish those buildings. Second would be site cleanup at Tryon. There's still a lot of other debris and stuff around. would be to go out and spend some money to have the site just cleaned up a little bit better than what it is now. Another idea was we have the Tryon development area. Should we look to do a marketing campaign to try to sell that property? Maybe hire a Cushman Wakefield, a Caldwell Banker to market that, but what are we going to market it for? A housing site, an industrial site, whatever the case may be, but maybe whichever we're going to do, pull together information about that site and put it into a marketing campaign to try and get something going up on that particular property. Next, identifying.
Jim, you're talking about,
Ted?
you're talking about the property up on top of the hill?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Identifying sites for development. You know, again, we talked about that earlier this year before COVID hit. You know, Scott and I have a list of sites that we wanted to share with you, but just, with the Zoom format just doesn't allow for that to happen easily. Is that something you want to get back into? And if there is a particular site or sites you come up with, how do we want to try to market those? And do we want to put dollars into our budget to do something like that? The next one is a food site certification. I sent you some information and it's attached to your agenda. This came across my desk a couple weeks ago. Jay Garner, who's was one of the 3 corporate site selectors from the Site Selectors Guild, who came to Fulton County a couple of years ago to assess and give us recommendations about economic development. He has partnered with an engineering firm that are now offering to do these food site certifications. They've developed a process whereby they come in and do a detailed evaluation of a site, and if it meets all of their criteria, we'll give it a certification that it is a site suitable for a food and beverage industry. And Jay Gardner, when I saw this, he and I have gone back and forth a number of conversations and emails about what he does. It's a very detailed assessment that is done. He looks at a number of criteria, and the fact that he's been here before, remembers Tryon, and remembers the property there, thinks that it has potential to be to receive this type of a certification. And it kind of hit me when you read about what the Site Selectors Guild is saying, that rural areas are going to become attractive. Then you read that the food and beveraging processing industry sector is one of the 5 fastest growing sectors that we have. Then you tack on the fact that our target industry analysis said food and beverage industry cluster would be a good fit for Tryon. I thought it would be worth taking a look at what it would take to have this type of a site certification done. If you had a chance to look at the information, it's not cheap. The upfront fees are about $30,000, plus the expenses for 2 people to travel up here and spend several days here. But the thought was, if it's something we're interested in, maybe go to National Grid, have them pay for half, and then we find a way to split the local share in a couple of different ways. So again, that's another potential project or initiative for next year. So those were some of the ideas that we've had. Wanted to toss those out there and see if any of those are something that you would want to try to undertake in 2021. Or if you have another idea, please let us know what that is.
I have some comments. Time for me to start talking. No, you and I met because I'm going to be the chairman for the next 2 years, starting in January. And, I still want to see Tryon move forward. We talked about clearing more buildings as money is available. If we do have sales coming up, possibly, to take some of that money and use towards, as you had mentioned, there's a lot of buildings still left there, and I think you recommended that, and you said you had like a cost analysis of what asbestos removal might be in some of the smaller buildings, and if we could at least take care of that asbestos removal, even if we did the bigger building too, the county may be able to come in and do it saying, hey, they're already taken care of. Now you just tear them down and get rid of them. I don't know what the status of the demolition team right now, how backlogged they are, but obviously, as you had said, it'd be an incentive to have that asbestos. And I think you said a couple buildings or some of the smaller ones, it might be only a couple $1,000s. So, and I think Dave Demore, you had mentioned, had said, possibly same thing, abatement in the bigger building where the auditorium is and stuff. But I just thought if we can just clear more buildings, have more sites ready instead of seeing all old dormitory buildings, especially on the backside there. That's maybe something we should consider as long as we have the money. We're not going to take it out of our budget right now, but I'm just saying if we have sales, we can do that. And another question I have is if we do put it in the budget and we don't do any of the stuff, say the sales don't come up, it's no harm, no foul, right? I mean, we just don't spend it. I mean, Paris isn't going to come back to us and say, hey, you said you were going to do this. How come your budget looks so whacked out? It's a zero now instead of say 50,000 or 100,000. So
That would be, there's no obligation to spend money in your
it's
budget.
our wish list.
Yep.
It's our wish list, yes. So I think some money spent towards that would be preparing us for the future. And like I said, if the demolition team can come, that'd be great. Or even if we have to hire out as the asbestos out there, it's obviously going to save us money down the road too,
Well, it would also help from the standpoint of if we had a company that comes in that wanted to buy a lot that had 2 buildings on it, their willingness to do the demolition themselves would be enhanced if those buildings were free and clear of asbestos.
True.
As opposed if they were full of asbestos.
Right.
So, just cleaning those buildings up could help incentivize, a potential buyer to do the demolition themselves. Okay, and not having us have to do the demolition. So, cleaning them up certainly is would be a win-win situation.
And as for the $30,000 cost for the last proposal to be certified, I think if a site selector is coming to you saying he can possibly get us there. I mean, and as you said, if we can get half of it covered by National Grid and say $5,000 share from us, the county and the CRG, it's just if they'll go for it, if we have other partners, but we've been trying to partner with these other 2 entities on a lot of our projects. It's only going to be a plus because if we do lot sales, they also get money back from the sale of it too. So it's a win-win for both. If we can propose something to show that we have the certification. So to put in maybe $5,000 or $7,500 in our budget, I don't think is out of the question, as long as we can get some kind of agreement with the others that they would help out with the certification, so that it just doesn't fall back on us saying, oh, no, they said no, but we're going to now have to pay $15,000, so.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we should undertake on our own.
No, so if we have the 2 partners which we work hand in hand with, I think that's the way to do it that way.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? So suggestion is to put some dollars in to preparing buildings for demolition and throw some dollars in to for food site certification on the presumption that we can get National Grid and a couple of other partners to help share in this cost. Anything else?
I think the dollar
Jim,
amount that
the only question,
go ahead, Todd.
Go ahead, Todd.
no, the only question or thought that I had is this certification, is this something that is recognizable throughout the industry? Is it something that really has a lot of value, or did this just come from Mr. Gardner?
It has come from Mr. Gardner, but as a member of the Site Selectors Guild, and he happens also this year to be its chairman. His stature in the industry, gives the certification, validity because of who's doing it. Okay, but it's not necessarily recognized as a nationally recognized certification at the present time. No.
Well, I agree with Joe. If we can get the costs split in some fashion with National Grid and maybe a couple other partners, I would be in favor of that as well.
Okay.
I also think that, with how long it's taken us to get Tryon and how long it's taken us to get it to where it is today, that looking out into the future is not a bad idea in regards to identifying future sites for development. It just, I've been on the board for quite a few years now, and it just takes a long time to make anything happen. So, looking out into the future for an additional site and how to access or acquire that site might be important as well.
It takes time. You're absolutely right.
It sure does.
Is that an initiative that the board would like to put on its plate for next year?
I would like to look at the list of possible sites and look at that also. I mean,
okay.
Going back to my initial proposal about the demolition or removal of asbestos, and maybe not so much demolition, because demolition could be done at no cost, possibly by the county or by a possible buyer if the asbestos there. But I would just throw out a number, maybe say 100,000, and see what that could do for us. I mean, it could do a lot, it could be a little bit, depends on where areas you want to target. So I think if you're just looking for a dollar amount, we have sales possibly a lot more than that coming. We've got 90,000 possibly coming from the sale of the south side, so I would start with 100,000 and then maybe put $50,000 or so, or 75,000 for possible site acquisitions. Just try to put numbers in for you.
With respect to the Tryon development area, is there any interest of trying to market that particular site a little bit better and pull together some information that we have into a little bit of a marketing campaign for next year to try to see if we can generate some interest in a potential buyer for that property?
Isn't Cushman Wakefield, as they represent us, wouldn't they have some kind of a brochure or some kind of a strategy as to how they're marketing already? To have something more to hand them, I would think that.
They don't have anything right now.
Okay.
We've done that environmental site. We've done that desktop environmental assessment, environmental design partnership did that evaluation. We just haven't taken that information and pulled it together into a singular document to be able to give out to potential parties of interest. I just think we need, that would be the initiative, is to pull together all of the information that we have and put it into a format that we could use and send out to, potential builders and developers, and here's what we have. Again, we also need to discuss whether, do we want to keep that property reserved for housing, or would you be willing to also market that as a shovel-ready site? That could be another one of the sites that we put out there for manufacturing, other types of businesses, not necessarily for housing.
I think the way it's laid out, maybe housing would be the best possibility. And I'm actually talking with a developer now that just did this on McKay Road, and he's possibly looking for expansion. So I'll talk with you guys more about that later.
Okay. Any other ideas or thoughts about 2021 initiatives?
I just was going to echo real quick, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Todd's comments. An awful lot of money to spend on that initiative for the certification. But if we could get some cost sharing there, I think, all it takes is one. If we can develop a little bit of momentum, if we could, attract just one partner to come in, it's kind of the flywheel concept, and I think you'd have a much better opportunity to attract other like-minded businesses to that area. But we got to get that first one first, and maybe this is something with the partnership of our other partners in the county that we can pursue.
Well, what I'll do, my intent here was to share this food site certification concept with you folks first. If you didn't have an interest in it, then I wasn't going to take it any further. But it sounds like there's an interest in this on the stipulation that we could bring in other partners to help pay for this whole thing. So with that, I will now reach out to Ron Peters and Travis. We'll talk. I'll talk with Ron and share this with him, have him take a look at it and see, is it something that the CRG would be also interested in. And so that'll be the next step in this process. Travis, any comments?
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like an interesting idea. Certainly worth discussing with our board and seeing if we can partner with you on it.
Okay. Good. I will send all this information over to Ron and ask him to run it by his board to see what level of interest there may be in taking a further look at this. Obviously, no commitments, but just continue to explore and see how we might be able to pull something like this off. All right?
Yeah, Jim, I think you already see the base in the two counties. You got CG Roxanne, you got Faye, you got Euphrates, you got Beech Nut, all its manufacturers. But in addition to that, you've got distribution facilities located nearby, with Walmart, with Target, and Family Dollar just built their building.
Yep.
So I think it'd be attractive to those manufacturers to be close to those distribution points also.
Good point. Okay, that's all I had for open session. Would like to ask for a motion to go into executive to discuss the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property.
Make that motion.
Well, second.
Semyon, Dave Demore. The roll call vote, Dave Demore,
Aye.
Joe Semyon,
Aye.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly.
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Tim Munn.
Aye.
We were We're going into executive session at 9:13 a.m. We will meet again on Tuesday, October 13th.
Hey, Jim, do we need to go out of executive and then?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes. Well, that's our next scheduled meeting date, subject to the governor continuing to grant his executive order allowing Zoom meetings to occur.
I've got one more comment. Do we talk about, as you and I had talked about, you staying on or wanting to stay on for another year? I mean, just so people on the board know where we're heading, anything, or and maybe a question because I know you said you wanted to, and I'm glad that you will be, as long as you get enough votes.
So out of executive,
So moved.
Dave Demore, seconded.
I'll second.
Tim Munn, Dave Demore,
Aye.
Joe Semyon,
Aye.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly.
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Tim Munn.
Aye.
We are back in open session at 9:31 a.m. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October 13th at 8 a.m. Is there any other business that we need to conduct today?
None for
Hearing
me.
none? Someone make a motion to close the meeting?
I make that motion.
Always do.
I do.
Seconded?
I'll second.
Mike Fitzgerald? Roll call vote, please. Dave Demore,
Aye.
Joe Semyon,
Aye.
Todd Rulison,
Aye.
Jane Kelly,
Aye.
Mike Fitzgerald,
Aye.
and Tim Munn.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 9:32 a.m. Thank you, folks.
Have a great week, guys.
Good week.